Okay, my name is Ann Epstein Harrison. I graduated in 1961 from the law school. I went to the Wharton School for undergraduate. That was the first year that they accepted women as undergraduates in the Wharton School. And when I got to be a high junior, I guess, I looked around to see what I could do with my Wharton degree. And at the time, things being very different, all I could see that anybody might hire me for was to be head of stock or something in a department store. And my father had always wanted to be a lawyer and never got that far, so I decided to apply to the law school, and I was fortunate to be awarded the Lieutenant Stanley, I think, S. Friedman Scholarship, because I couldn't have gone without a scholarship. And it was a really exciting experience. I lived at home. I wasn't able to live at school, but much more intellectually challenging than anything I'd experienced before, and a little odd being female, especially at the time. But having come from Wharton, it wasn't a big change. So that was good experience, I guess, and overall, it was a wonderful experience. There were a few little oddities like Charles Allen Wright, not sure if his name was, from Texas, and he was a visiting professor in evidence for a year, and I had him for one semester. He never acknowledged that there were any women in the class at all for the entire semester. So that was kind of interesting. And W. Foster Reeve, who was very famous, didn't call on me much, but he did once. He said, would you say that was a prophylactic rule, Miss Epstein? You know what prophylactic means, don't you? So, there were little odds and ends, but by and large, everybody was pretty accepting. And one of the things I did learn was that all the guys who spoke up didn't necessarily know more than I did when they said in Smith versus Green, but in Johns versus Brown, because sometimes they were actually wrong about the cases when you went back and checked the name against the case. But so that was a good experience too, because growing up at that time, in the back of my head, there was always a feeling that if it was really important, they'd give it to a man to do. So overall, I thought that the law school taught one how to think, and that's probably the most important thing that I learned here, not the law about this or that, but how to think about the law, how to analyze issues, and I think that stood me in good stead. No, I think being treated like everybody else was all that I expected, and I don't have any recollection of anybody going out of his way because there were no hers at the time, except in legal writing. But as long as I was treated like everybody else, that was fine. I was perfectly happy with that. And I wouldn't expect anything different from that. I was riding around in a car with some fellow students and Dean Husted, who had taken a stuffed animal head from the back seat of the car and stuck it out the window and yelled at people. Honestly, well, I worked for a short time for Professor Noyes Leach on the restatement of international law, and I became pregnant shortly after spring break of my last year, so I had to quit that when they were remodeling the law school, and you had to walk down 4 flights of steps to the ladies' room, and I didn't have time to do that always, so I had to give that up. But after my daughter was born, I got a job with the Public Housing Administration, which shortly became the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I stayed there for the rest of my career. For 3 years, I was the Director of Community Planning and Development, and after that I went back to legal and became the Regional Counsel for the Mid-Atlantic. It was 5 states in the District of Columbia, and we had Philadelphia office and 4 field offices. It was terrific for me because when my kids were young, things were pretty boring. The law hadn't changed in a long time, and so you just look at an old file to see what you needed to do. And then as my kids got older, the legislation started to change and much more exciting things to do, and I got to travel some, and so the timing worked out really well for me, and the job worked out really well. And while I thought I was underpaid when I was there, I have to say I have a pension now, and that was probably pretty good. I have to say I do see Penn graduates as different from the other, let's say, Pennsylvania law schools. I'm not as familiar with others nationally, but when I took the bar review course, it seemed to me I could tell the Penn, Harvard, Yale graduates' questions from the other nameless law schools in the metropolitan area. I thought they were much more perceptive, they were much more direct, they were much more logical questions, and I think it goes back to learning how to think at Penn Law School. When I came out and I had to do a clerkship, I didn't know much at all about the Philadelphia court system or the Pennsylvania court system, or where to go to file a paper, or any of those things that a lot of people learned in a lot of other law schools. But I think just in my experience going through HUD up to the regional counsel position, which was the highest position in the 5-state area if you didn't want to go to Washington, that it was because I learned how to analyze issues, how to think about issues, how to evaluate issues and the work supporting them or not. And so whatever anyone does when they get out of law school, I think if you've been to Penn, you probably are going to do a really good job because you know how to approach a problem.